This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Every day, history is made at City Hall through speeches, meeting minutes, and documents. And for almost 50 years, one city department has worked to preserve that history so that they are freely available for future generations to check out. Located just across the street from City Hall is the Department of Records and Information Services, also known as DORIS. It holds millions of files in its collection dating back to the 1600s. The department has organized a new exhibit that shows just what kind of history you can see in New York City's archives. The show is called NYC Story, The City on Record. It displays records from throughout the 5 boroughs and various mayoral administrations. You can view the exhibit online at remembranceny.nyc and or visit the department's headquarters at 31 Chambers Street. With me now is Pauline Toole, DORIS Commissioner. Nice to talk to you. And City Archivist and Curator Rosie Mendez. Hi, Rosie.
Hi.
So, Pauline, what is the mission of the Department of Records and Information Services, a.k.a. DORIS, as you see it?
Yes, I'm going to just call it DORIS, and the DORIS mission is to preserve and make available New York City government's records. And as you point out, they date to the 1636 to be exact, and go through the prior administration that ended in December. People tend to think of the records of city government as being very dull, like number crunching kind of things, but they're not. They tell you the story of the city, they tell you the story of the people of the city, and they're fascinating.
The exhibit includes 3 guiding questions. They are, who is a New Yorker? How is New York built? And what makes New York, New York? Rosie, why were these 3 questions that you had in mind when you put together this exhibit?
Well, we wanted to encapsulate the experience of New Yorkers. And we wanted to do it in a way that told the story from a nonlinear perspective. So we started to thinking about, like, what are the things that make we started with the first one, really, what makes New York, New York. We talked about transportation. We talked about the infrastructure, the cultural aspects, and all these different aspects that are covered by the city's history. And then we started thinking about other questions, and who's a New Yorker came to play. There's from the city's history, there's the point of contact with Native peoples, and how the city actually becomes to the point of incorporation, where you have all the boroughs coming in, and then to present time. So the city has gone a lot of under transition, and in that period of time, serving as kind of like an epicenter of immigration, there has been a lot of different communities coming in. So we wanted to tell that story. And then the other part of how was New York City built, or basically what, we wanted to also encapsulate that and see not just how the infrastructure was built, but actually who was building the city and what actually happened in the process of that. So that's how we came across those 3 questions.
Listeners, we want to hear from you as we discuss what's in New York City's archive. What is a record or archive from your own life that you cherish the most? Give us a call, 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. It could be a letter or an email from a family member who has passed, or maybe it's a memorable concert ticket or an object you've held on to because it just makes you feel special in a certain way. Our number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Or maybe it's something that represents your relationship and your family's history with New York City. We want to know what you keep in your archives. Our number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Pauline, just how many records does the department own in its collection?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you, but I'll tell you, like when I began 12 years ago, we had like 43 terabytes of digital records, and now we have more than 300 and more coming all the time. And we have both at our headquarters in our really beautiful research facility in Industry City, something like 275,000 boxes of historical records. Plus, we also operate the municipal library with, books and reports and publications, and those things come together. It's unimaginable, the content that the archive and the library possess and how interesting it is. I just can't emphasize that enough, because people have a misimpression of what the archives are. But one of the things that Rosie did in being our leader on the online exhibit was to work with our team, which cut across the agency's various disciplines, various sectors, and selected records that when they're online, you as the user follow your own pathway. There's not a linear thing. So it's how I might look at who is a New Yorker and go from a record from 1636 to a 19th century immigration record. Someone else might do something completely different, and you'd have a fully different experience. And same with the like what makes New York New York, right? Someone might go to fashion. Someone might go to
culture or environment or something.
WNYC. We have WNYC content up there.
Rosie, what are some of the oldest articles that you have in the archives?
Yeah, so
Items.
One of the, I guess, most popular and oldest articles we have is the deed to Coney Island. That's the one that a lot of people ask for. We have even the original seal that was with it, and it's actually in our digital exhibit as well. We have records, the Dutch records. So we have in the Dutch records a lot of records of the I'm probably going to mispronounce this, the Burger
rights?
Yes, burger rights, which is it was a very important thing that basically determined who was a citizen. So that's those records actually have been fully digitized and are available through our digital collections, and there are examples of that in the exhibit as well. And then we have some of other records that are not as well known in the exhibit. We have a draft riot claim, for example. So that is a part of history that unfortunately the story has not been told often. So, and being that it's a narrative, it just really gives you an insight into, how life was experienced by just an everyday person. And it's an important part of the city's history, but also of civil rights, right? So, the records really run the gamut. The early records that we have, and we have a lot of records for the Common Council, which also, as Pauline described, kind of addresses all these different aspects of the city's history.
What is something that's just really interesting to you, Pauline? Because you said it's an incredibly interesting archive. What is something that you just remember oh, wow, that's really wild?
Well, I'm gonna go with the LaGuardia collection.
Okay.
Because he had such a long tenure as mayor. And so much was done. I mean, it was the Depression. It was World War II. It was the investment by the federal government in all sorts of construction projects, beginning with bridges and roads and parks, but also housing, right? That collection. But in going through that collection, I came across this report on conditions in Harlem that was written by this blue ribbon panel of people who founded the NYCLU or the ACLU and the NAACP. And in the wake of a riot in 1935, LaGuardia appointed this commission to look at conditions in Harlem and figure out what do we do. And they dug in and they held hearings, as government holds hearings today. And they looked at the conditions in schools and healthcare and infrastructure and work, and determined where there were failings, where the city wasn't doing its job. The report wasn't issued, right? It was too critical. And that just sat in our archive. And we found it and we digitized it and we put up a website and we sponsored a conference at the Schomburg about that report and its relevance to our time in New York City in 2020s, 2021, 22, 23. Yeah. So that to me is a collection that gives so much all of the time, and that is a particular episode, a particular item in the collection that has relevance to us today, as we can see.
We're discussing a new in-person and online exhibit from the New York City's Department of Records and Information Services. It's called NYC Story, The City on Record. It's on view at 31 Chambers Street or at remembrancenyc.nyc. My guests are Doris Commissioner Pauline Toole and archivists, did I say wrong?
Remember.nyc.
Sorry, thank you. Say it again.
Remember.nyc.nyc.
Thank you so much. We are asking for a record or an archive from your own family that you cherish. Our phone number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. We've got a couple of calls coming in. Let's talk to Joe in Massapequa, New York. Hey, Joe, thanks for calling. All of it.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I wanted to talk about my grandfather, who emigrated to the U.S. in 1897 from Italy. When he was an adult, when he became an adult, they sent him back to his town to get a bride, and he brought my grandmother over as a new bride, didn't speak a word of English, had just met this man that she married in 1905. And what I have in my archives that I treasure more than anything probably is a couple of letters from my great-grandfather to my grandmother. Now he had sent his daughter off to America, married to this man, and never saw her again. And they just corresponded by letter. And I have these letters that go back to the 1930s, where my great grandfather was, making mention of the Depression and sorry to hear that my grandfather's out of work and so forth. It's really truly an amazing piece of the immigrant story in New York City.
Thank you so much for calling in. This text says, I have my 1988 fingerprint sheets for my first arrest with ACT UP. I have it framed. We are talking about NYC Story, the city on record. We'll have more after a quick break. This is all of it. You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. We're discussing a new in-person and online exhibit from the New York City's Department of Records and Information Services. It's called NYC Story, the City on Record, on view at 31 Chambers Street or at remembernyc.nyc. My guests are Doris Commissioner Pauline Toole and archivist Rosie Mendez. We're also hearing from you. What's a record or archive from your life you cherish the most? Our number is 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. We have a question for you. This is Gail calling in from New York. Hi, Gail. You're on the air.
Oh, thank you. Did you need me to turn the radio off?
That would be good. And do you have a question?
Oh, I do. Here's my question. Thank you. This comes at a very important time in my life. I need one more piece of information for my Irish citizenship. And everything's in, but they called me and told me that I need a marriage certificate from my parents were, my grandparents were married in Manhattan and my parents as well. So I need it from Manhattan. Can you tell me how I can get that quickly and easily?
Absolutely. You can get that at the Municipal Archives. If you email research@records with an S, .nyc.gov. Let me say that again, research@records.nyc.gov. We will be happy to provide you with that marriage certificate. You'll need to tell us your grandparents' names and the year that they got married, and we will endeavor to find that and send it to you as long as that was after 1959.
If someone wants to visit the archives, Pauline, they're not a professor, they're not a researcher, they just, what does the process look like?
Well, if they don't want to research and they just want to visit, they walk into 31 Chambers where we have our in-person exhibit. We actually have a second exhibit about the World's Fair in 1964 up that a lot of people of a certain age really adore. Mm-hmm. And then they would see this exhibit that showcases each of the boroughs of New York and elements that make them special. Every borough has a bridge, for example. In Brooklyn, we have an image of the records of enslaved people, births to enslaved women, up as part of that history. They could go into one of the research rooms and then decide, I want to do research, and Rosie and her colleagues would help them find what they wanted to find. So it's very easy to visit us, and if you want to do research, we ask people to let us know in advance, because then we can pull the content and their time is as productive as possible.
So many New Yorkers have family history with New York, an immigration story through Ellis Island, Rosie. How much can the Department of Records be helpful for someone who wants to do more family research?
Yeah, so we have a really great genealogy research room. We have a lot of resources online, actually. So we have a portal for some of our birth, death, and marriage that is continuously being added to. So that's kind of the first step that we tell people about. So that website is historicalvitalrecords.nyc. And .gov, and that has over, I think, 13 million at this point. It's something crazy like that, and being added to continuously. So, but we also have other resources. We have a lot of information. We have city directories, which are also held elsewhere by other repositories. We have records related to incarceration. So, I mean, that's always kind of crazy that if your ancestors were involved or were arrested, it's actually a really good, useful sort of information because they get a lot into the nitty gritty of like nativity and all of that in those records. We don't have any student records, but we do have some really, really early kind of samples of schools back like in the 1910s and the early 1900s. So if you're going all the way back, then that's something that we may happen to have. We have voter registrations, which are really were recently digitized. So, I mean, we definitely, whatever we don't have, we try to connect other people. And the biggest one that I forgot about is actually city government, right? So if your family member was a municipal employee, we have the civil list, and that is a great resource as well. So we often try to connect researchers to other places as well, other repositories, if we don't have what they need.
And the almshouse records.
The almshouse, how can I forget that? Oh, my God. Yes, the almshouse is this great records of people who were that basically at the almshouse and other facilities in Governor's Island or then Blackwell's Island and Pottersfield. There's too much.
There's so much. Let's take a couple more calls. Let's talk to Jacqueline, who's calling from Englewood, New Jersey. Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you for calling all of it. What's your prized possession?
Hi there. I'm calling because my grandmother, I have her diploma that she got when she graduated in 1924 from one of the early post-Reconstruction universities for African Americans.
That's amazing. Oh, what a wonderful thing to have. Thank you so much for calling. Let's talk to George, who's been on hold. Thank you for holding, George. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. When the Port of New York began its enormous growth and the technology changed for steamships and for deeper vessels and for longer vessels, the Hudson River took over the East River. And New York City created something called the Bureau of Docks with the famous General McClellan actually running it. And they've created something absolutely extraordinary for the entire length of the Hudson River waterfront. And yet very little is known about it. And I found it very hard to try and get much information out of it. The New York Public Library has some. It's rather difficult to go into it and gain the access that I want. But I'm wondering what Doris has on hand.
Any ideas?
Well, I don't know what we do have on hand, but I do encourage you to contact us by using that research at records.nyc email, and it will tell you to register, and then you'll have a back and forth with the archivist because we have an entire Department of Ports and...
Yeah, it changes names over time, but we definitely have a lot, including drawings, like the waterfront drawings.
Yeah, so check us out.
This next text says, when my aunt moved from the apartment she'd been in for a couple of decades, I found the 1940s New York City tax photo of the building and printed and framed it for her as a parting gift so she could take her old apartment with her.
Yeah.
I understand you have a lot of the tax photos.
So twice in we have two collections, one from the 1980s and one from the 1940s that depict every building in New York City. And the 1940s ones are really beautifully digitized, and we hope to get funding someday to do that with the 1980s ones as well.
As you've been shifting to a more digital world, how has that changed Doris?
Oh, I don't know that it's changed Doris so much. I mean, I think one of the things that we are able to do is share so much more content online with people. And we do that in a number of ways. We've talked about our Remember NYC site. We also have archives.nyc, which holds all of our blogs and samples of our past exhibits. And soon on that site, we're going to open up our neighborhood stories piece, which is an endeavor, a storytelling endeavor we've had to take in stories from regular New Yorkers. Those personal remembrances in concert with government records tell you not just about the decision that was made, but how it may have impacted someone living in the neighborhood.
We actually have a snippet from one of those stories by Kenneth Granderson about his Black history education growing up in Brooklyn and one St. Anne's teacher who made an impact. Do we have time for that?
And so I was raised very sort of apolitical and aculturally. When I say that, meaning like, yeah, we're Black, but we didn't do a whole lot of Black culture sort of stuff. I really got that at school because one of the few Black teachers in the school before she tragically passed in 76 was Mrs. Jacqueline Lee, who's the mother of David, Joy, and Sankey Lee, who were at St. Anne's, as well as their older brother Spike Lee. And she introduced us to, the Ralph Ellisons, and, Malcolm X, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that she was driven to make sure that her 3 kids who were in the school, got exposure, et cetera. But as a result, the other Black students who were there, we benefited too.
Oh, that's such a great story. As we close out, Pauline, as commissioner for 12 years, you were in charge of very important times in the city, especially the COVID pandemic. How has your department gone about documenting and archiving that really difficult time in New York?
Well, we are taking in all of the government records from the Health and not from Health and Hospital, the Department of Health, from the mayor's office, and those will be available to people as they get processed. Images. We have some oral histories that different city agencies conducted with their staff, talking about their work with people who were sick or their work providing resources to others. So that is one epoch of New York City history that will be well documented for people in the future.
If you have time, you should check out the in-person and the online exhibit from the New York City's Department of Records and Information Services. It's called NYC Story, The City on Record. Thanks so much to Doris Commissioner Pauline Toole and to archivist Rosie Mendez. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
And that is all of it for today. I'm Allison Stewart. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you. I'll meet you back here next time.